We all know how important reputation is in this industry, so it's easy to see why more and more pros are turning to Andersen to build their projects and craft their legacies. Andersen has earned the trust of pros time and time again for over 120 years. They will work with you to build more efficiently, stay on budget, and earn more referrals by providing high-quality products and support, making your installs easier and confidence stronger. See how Andersen can help you craft your legacy at trustandersen.com. Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, a weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. Like all you people, thank you very much for being here. This is our regular discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. Today, I am joined by Fine Homebuilding contributing editor and production manager for TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwandt.
Howdy.
Associate editor for Fine Homebuilding, Grant Baver.
Hey.
Peter Koopman of Koopman Lumber Company.
Hey, everybody.
And Randy Williams of Green Building Advisor, our editor.
Hello.
It is a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks so much for being here. And thanks for all of you for being here as well. I also want to thank Peter very much. It is his company who is sponsoring this podcast and allowing us to do this with you all here in front of a live audience, which is a pretty awesome development for the podcast. And Peter, thanks for being here. Can you briefly tell us about your family's business and your role there?
Great. Thanks, Pat. And before we kick it off, I just wanted to thank the Fine Homebuilding Magazine for putting this together. It's been great to meet everybody here. Just super happy with the knowledge and subjects we've been talking about. So my name is Peter Koopman. I'm the business development director and sales manager from Koopman Lumber. We're a family-owned lumber and building material distribution company in Massachusetts. We own and operate 13 locations and have plans to expand in Connecticut. Our customer base is many of you here, but predominantly developers, speculative home builders, custom home builders, remodelers, and DIY enthusiasts.
Well, thanks, man. And thanks again for supporting the podcast. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we've been touching on the last couple of days is both bringing new folks into the industry and finding good help is a challenge. I think you'd agree. What are some of the special challenges related to finding folks for your business?
Our challenges are very similar to many of you listening to this. I mean, it's hard to find people that want to work in this industry for whatever reason. Our company in particular, two positions that are difficult to hire for are drivers and load pickers. As you can imagine, being in Massachusetts, the winters are pretty chilly and people aren't lining up at the door to build loads of lumber in the snow or freezing rain. But there are ways to combat that. Being a family-owned company, we promote culture, and we truly believe that if you treat people in a way that they want to be treated, they'll stay, and they will tell people about their experience with what their experience at the company and share that with their family. There's a statistic that I'm going to probably screw it up, but about 50% of people that work at a specific lumber location across the country actually have a family member that also works there.
They're introduced to the company, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And then we employ very similar strategies to what Kate was talking about earlier, but one that's been helpful is offering referral fees for people to invite their friends. We pay a $2,500 fee if they can bring somebody in the fold. So we put a lot of energy and effort into staffing the locations.
When you're thinking about a prospective employee and you've brought them in for an interview or you're doing it video conferencing, whatever, how can you tell when you have the right person you're talking to? Is there some signs you look for? Are there some clues that you can look for to know if someone is going to be a good fit for your company?
Nothing really jumps out that would stand out, but it's really about having shared values to the company that you're going to be working at. So for us, We're a family-owned business. We really appreciate family, and if you are passionate about the field that you're going to be working in and can show some sort of skill, that obviously goes a long way. But just being a great person and having a great attitude is super important to Koopman.
The folks who are here probably have suppliers of different types, electrical, plumbing, cabinet perhaps. What's different about those businesses versus someone who is well suited for your business? What are some of the special skills, some of the je ne sais quoi, you might even say, to be successful at one of your lumber yards?
One thing that is different about working at a lumber dealer is there's so many different products and SKUs that we sell. We have over 10,000 different products, and you need to be an expert in anything that you're discussing. So one day you can be talking about windows and how to keep water away from the structure. Next day you're talking about roofing shingles or the warranty of a deck board, whatever it is. So you really need to be learning constantly, asking questions, and being a student of the business.
What do your customers tell you they like about your yard versus other places they might shop for building materials? What is a calling card of your company that you think makes it a good place for folks like this to buy stuff?
I mean, it all starts at the top and from the leadership. I mean, like I said, we greatly care about our staff and employees, and we want people to feel like they're a part of the Koopman family. And because of the culture we've been able to create, we feel that makes it way down to the customer. So if you're a Koopman Lumber customer, you are probably in communication with ownership. Most people have my cell phone number or my dad, uncle, or aunt's cell phone number. So we're very easy to get a hold of and accessible. We obsess over the customer experience. It's something that I think about all the time. We have regular meetings with customers about how we can improve our service, how they can improve their service for us to do our job properly also. So just being very transparent and willing to listen to the suggestions that you all have is a differentiator for us.
What do you guys all think about what we were just talking about? Thoughts on lumberyard material suppliers? I would think you would agree with me that they're a key part of your success if you're a contractor, right? I mean, like, they can make your life miserable or help solve a lot of problems for you. What do you think, Grant? You're nodding.
Absolutely. Your supplier can make or break you, like you said. Knowing you have a supplier that's in your corner and also somebody who can go above and beyond for you when needed is critical. You need that piece of sheathing at 5 p.m. on a Friday. If your lumberer can get it out to you, that's just, you can't replace that person.
Ian, can you think of times when a lumberyard or supplier has come to your rescue or ruined your life or kept you up at night or whatever?
The one that stands out to me was I was building my house and we dropped one of the garage trusses. And I thought, man, what is this going to do to my schedule now? Like, as a self-build home builder, it was really important for me to try and keep the project moving. And we did that on a Saturday. And I reached out to my sales guy Saturday night, and he called me back, Sunday, middle of the day. And I had a new truss like Tuesday morning. And without having a good supplier, I would have, been weeks or, who knows how long before they would have put one truss back into production.
What do you think, Randy?
I always appreciate their patience with me. I tend to ask for some pretty unique products or products that are very hard to source. A lot of them aren't from the United States.
So you have to explain it first, right? Before, yeah.
Usually, yep. And they've always been very patient with putting up with me, I guess.
Well, I would tell all of you to support your local suppliers because it is a far more reliable way to get the things you need than if you're relying on a giant company who has probably less concern about your business than a local company who needs your support, right? You all provided a number of good questions. I'm going to launch right into them, and I was hoping that this part of the podcast, as part of our summit, could be a chance for you all to learn from each other. So I appreciate those of you who emailed questions. And I'd certainly appreciate Jen Morris, who's on our editorial staff, for compiling them in a cogent way. Thank you, Jen. What do you think will be the standard wall assembly for the Northeast United States in the future? For a long time, it was 2x6s, 16 inches on center with fiberglass insulation and 1/2 inch OSB. Currently, we have tons of options for designing the 4 control layers. It can get confusing. What do you see the future standard being? So I guess it's like, is this going to continue to be our wall assembly, or are we going to come up with something that's new and easier to build and better? Anyone want to weigh in on that?
I think one of the takeaways that I had from many of the presentations, Rachel's and Jesse's being key amongst them, is that you have to think about what you're trying to achieve with that wall assembly. So if there's anything that I would take away from it now is you have to start out with what is that goal of your build first. And maybe the reason that assembly became a standard was the goal was much simpler for a very long time. And now, because of the knowledge that we have about building science and materials and methods, we can reevaluate our goals as builders and plug in that better assembly for a specific project.
I think to play devil's advocate, a lot of builders would say, well, of course you build the least expensive assembly that builds the job, or does the job. How are you going to, what's beyond that, Ian? What part of that conversation is not being talked about in that statement?
But I think you just validated the point of that the goal for a long time was just to build it as cheaply and accessibly as possible. And we look at what Bird's Mouth does out in Oregon, and they're trying to do different things with the wildfire work. And we think about the presentation that Rockwool put on. I think about my sister who lives in a wildfire-prone area of Colorado. That's a totally different set of goals that might not be achievable by just the lowest cost wall assembly.
What were you going to say, Randy?
I was just going to say we do have a lot of options, right? The code, looking at the 2020, 2021, 2024 codes and going forward, it's not about one single assembly. We've got all kinds of options, whether it be the prescriptive code, which it's how I build. It was a cookbook. I followed the recipe of the code. But there are performance ways to build as well that you get some trade-offs. If you can make a house more airtight, maybe you can use a little bit different window or a little less insulation. So there's all kinds of options.
Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but the stretch code is now law in Massachusetts, right? I'm guessing your client, well, first of all, can you tell us briefly what that means? And I'm guessing you're hearing about your clients who are either enthusiastic, probably in this group, or others who are less so.
Yeah. This is not the easiest question to answer, but in Massachusetts, there's roughly 230 municipalities, and approximately 180 have adopted the stretch code, and some towns are now adopting specialized energy code, and then even levels above that. So when we go to supply a home, the first thing we ask is, we know what town it's in, obviously, but do you have a HERS rater? Are you using the prescriptive method? Like what codes do we need to meet here? And then from there, that generally dictates the wall assembly. What we're seeing a lot of, and this is kind of different than what I was anticipating would happen, is we're seeing a lot of people just building the same way they've been building and putting R30 in the wall, as opposed to utilizing the exterior insulation, the continuous insulation right now. I think that's going to shift. Which is
tell folks what you're talking about. So they're taking 2x8s, right, and putting R30 bats on the wall and framing, much like you would have with 2x6s or 2x4s in decades past, right?
Yeah, or 2x6 with just closed cell, which is not that fun to do. But what it does allow, though, and this kind of goes against what we've been talking about, which is pushing building practices forward, but it's adverse to change. So contractors are afraid of change a lot of times. They don't want to educate their framing crew on what they need to do to install like a Zip R6 or whatever. So sometimes they'll take the path of least resistance, and while meeting code and still building a very energy efficient wall, but sometimes they're just a little nervous about what they need to do to improve their practices.
What do you think about this, Grant?
Yeah, I think the future in some way, shape, or form is going to be, as Ben said yesterday, you have really two major options for high R value walls. You can do a double stud or a thicker cavity wall, or you can go to continuous insulation. Ben pointed out really well, double stud walls don't mix well with stupid decisions. So I think
I want that on a t-shirt.
we need to make a t-shirt for that. I think continuous insulation is going to have a much larger play. Randy and I just did actually an article, I think it was 2 issues ago, where we did, I think it was a 2x4 of blue skin membrane and rock wool exterior insulation with a rain screen.
In climate zone 7.
In climate zone 7. And the best part about that is you could basically take that assembly build anywhere in the United States and you're going to be just fine. You might need some, depending if you're going to put stucco on the outside of it, you might need to change some things. But that assembly with LP Smart Side could work anywhere in the United States. You might just have to change how much insulation's on it. So I think that's a good way to standardize. We know that exterior insulation helps with durability, keeps the sheathing above the dew point. So I think it's one of those things that builders are so resistant to it, but it's going to come eventually. It's going to have to.
Here's another recurring theme of the podcast and other discussions in our world. During the summit, we've discussed better building, craft business, doing good for others, company culture, and in the opening remarks from Ben, he mentioned about being hopeful that young people will pick up on all of this good work. What are some of the ways to make all of this appealing, interesting, or viable to young people interested in building who are the future of our industry? And how do we make it appealing and exciting? I think you all would agree. We hear negative messages from the populace generally about the trade work and building houses. How do we make it something that is appealing, and how can we reinforce the important parts of the craft, the gratifying aspects, when so many other things are steering folks away from entering trade work? Who wants to, this is a huge question. Who wants to go?
So recently I read an article where what was getting really good traction was younger people in the trades introducing other young people to the trades. And they make themselves look really interesting to other young people, and I think that was one of the ways that I think we can get young people to enter to learn of what we all know, right?
Ian, you've been working on this, I know, both inside and outside your company to encourage folks to join the ranks of carpenters. What do you have to say about this?
So we're in Madison, Wisconsin, lucky enough to have a really great tech school program that graduates about 40 new carpenters every year out of a 1-year program. I often speak at the estimating class, or I speak at the orientation, and I try to talk openly about my career path, how I got into the trades, some of the maybe mistakes I've made along the way, and I try to humanize being a tradesperson and show it as a viable career path that is still something that is an educated career path. It's continuous learning. You can put yourself in new situations all the time where you're going to challenge yourself. And I think about how Randy got here to where he is with doing the Green Building Advisor. And it's another step along a really interesting career path that you can have as a tradesperson.
Peter, Grant?
Yeah, it's very important for us to all be involved with different groups. Like builders associations are putting a lot of time and energy into getting the next generation involved. Like, for example, we have an event coming up in Massachusetts. It's a youth remodeling day where all companies and builders from all across the state are gathering, and there's 200 to 300 kids from Massachusetts trade schools coming to a sort of fair. Like, we're putting on a lumber Olympics. We're going to teach people how to lay out a wall, hammer some nails, and then run a 2x4 across the finish line. But just things like that, just try to differentiate yourself. They like the next generation really looks up to all of us and everybody here. So my advice would be to just get involved and try and make an impact.
Grant, you got thoughts? You're the youngest of the crew up here, so yeah, what do you say?
I am. So going along with everybody else says, there's definitely, oh man, I forgot what I was going to say now. I've been so excited to answer this whole time. I forgot what I was going to say. Education is very important. So we need to get in the face of young people and let them know, like, we have a stigma, and I think it's Mike Rowe says there's a war on work in this country. We have this stigma, tradespeople, it's a second career. It's for people who aren't smart enough to go to college, or it's for, and the fact of the matter is just not true. Most people in this, I think we raised hands earlier, almost everybody in here either had some sort of ownership or management interest in a business. Like, it's pretty significant, and it takes a smart, educated person to do that. We're not, cavemen dragging our hands on the ground and our hammers on the ground. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing I think we need to understand as a group is that the younger generation of people, my age and younger than I, who we're trying to attract in the trades, just fundamentally are different than what previous generations were. They work differently. They think differently. I know a big one is, I think I read a study somewhere, and don't quote me on this, I can't remember exactly, but there's a lot of kids who like starting time 7 a.m. in construction. Well, they're not going to work that job because they don't want to get up at 7 a.m. They would work 9 to 6, but they don't want to work 7 to 3. So maybe it's a matter of adjusting. And I'm not saying completely change what we've done, because what we've done has worked to some extent. But you also need to be understanding of the generation is different. They're a lot more technology oriented. So sometimes getting kids in to the trades, but figuring out a way to integrate technology works really well. And that can also increase excitement. Like, for instance, you have a new carpenter starting out. You get him with an iPad in the field with a 3D model of what he's building, might project to him or turn on an interest in him much more than looking at a 2D set of plans. So that's just one example, but I think that's, as an industry, we have to be mindful of that. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the solution is to attract young people necessarily, but what I do know is that we probably need to change our strategies, because what we have been doing to this point, we still need to get better at it.
I think one thing that we should all be doing is, if you have someone new on the site or someone who has an interest in work in construction, don't be a jerk. The hazing that was prevalent when I was a young carpenter, the board stretchers exercises and other silly things, like, there is no need for that. And frankly, there's no time for it. So if you want people to like the work, you have to make it enjoyable. And I think that is an easy first step. And plus, it makes it a nicer working environment for everybody and more inclusive, right?
Absolutely. And I'll add something to that. People out here who are, if you have younger people working in trades, be a mentor, not a boss, right? So maybe that person, it might be their first time cutting crown molding. If they cut something wrong, maybe go talk to them about why they did it wrong or what they could do differently. A lot of people, all ages, but especially the younger generation, doesn't react well to, you're an idiot, go back. But teach them, it's ultimately, and I've experienced that I've been thankful to have a lot of, and blessed to have a lot of good mentors. But I've also worked with a lot of people who, like, they could care less if I was there. They felt like I was their enemy or whatever it was going to be. But we can't treat them like that. We have to, and John just said something, sharing knowledge is never a bad thing. So share what you can, teach what you can, take time to invest in somebody. And that's what really gets, I think that gets anybody excited to work for you. But it also really gets younger people to feel like they have more value in the business. And when they have more value in the business, or feel like they have more value in the business, it motivates them to work more for you.
Very briefly, like, anyone who's ever done trade work is delighted to show anyone who's sitting next to them in the car or walking next to them on the sidewalk, I built that, I worked on that. And I think we all need to share the satisfaction that comes from making things and creating things when so many people are in jobs where it's very hard to know what you did at the end of the day. And one day is very different from the next. And personally, what I loved most about being a carpenter was working on different things, problem solving, having new challenges to solve. And I think that is another way that folks could be brought into the fold, right? Here's a good one. Why is this auditorium not full? How can we do better at inspiring small and production builders to pay attention to what all of us, I guess he means me too, I don't know, take for granted and are so passionate about? What are we missing? What are we missing? Why is this auditorium not full? Why aren't we talking about building better houses in mass media and other channels that might reach folks in the mainstream? I thought that would get it. Any of you have suggestions on how to do that? Brian, we got a taker there.
I think for people coming to events like this, one of the problems that has been talked about is if you start your own business and don't know how to run it for a profit, you're working 100 hours a week to stay open. And if you haven't got a business plan that lets you take 2 days off, you're never going to make it to events like this that will make you better at it. So we're stuck in a bit of a loop there, I feel like.
I wonder about this a lot, and how do we influence the larger market to move into better techniques? And I just think that somehow we're going to have to get on their screens in mass media with influence. I mean, if you think about builders, 30 years ago, no builder said, you know what's best for best practices to put stainless steel appliances in all of our kitchens. Like, no one made that decision other than the society saying this is what it's supposed to be. And that was influencers and designers and television shows, and how much shiplap got sold by Chip and Joanne. That's a major influence. And if we're not out there somehow at that level, then the people are going to keep going in that direction instead of this direction.
Have the summit in February.
Another one in February? I don't know. I got to rest up.
Yeah, that's IBS too. That February lands there. That's a tough month usually. Yeah.
No, you're right. And I think we need to do a good job. And I think we all have an obligation to be talking to folks in the industry, our peers, maybe not necessarily our direct competitors, but tell them what you're doing. Tell them why it matters. Figure out a way to find common ground, because there's always going to be a certain population in the industry who are going to race to the bottom. And I don't think any of us think that's a good idea related to what John was talking about just a little bit ago. Yeah. What else?
I agree with Patrick, right? We said about the career day at the Home Builders Association organizing. I was part of the first one when they started 2015, I think. We built roof, walls, and kids from trade school came and hands-on. And I remember those days, but what happened was very interesting. Most of the kids, when I talked to at that time, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to trade school just for graduate. Very few people were interested continuing being in a trade. Even now, we're behind in Massachusetts, 5 years for electrician, 5 years for plumbers and HVAC tradesmen. But what happens is, I always, when I talk to, even in my company, when I talk to the kids, when they want to be in a trade or somebody wants to get in a trade, I say, don't treat this as the last job you want to do, like traditionally people used to do that, because it was the only job I can get, and maybe I can get paid cash, whatever it is. Treat this job as a career, because a lot of kids, a lot of people come in a trade, they don't treat that job as a career. They treat it as a last job they want to do for a year or two and get out of it and go college or somewhere else. Somehow we need to take responsibility, somehow educate those kids that they can use these jobs as a career, not the last thing they want to do it or a temporary. Because, for example, they can work for 5 years without going to college and get paid while they're working and educating and learning. At the same time, in 5 years, they could be a project manager, they could be a lead, and they can grow in that career. And I think we should take a little bit of a responsibility in saying, okay, we need to explain, we need to have tools and educational moments with those kids or people that want to change a career or get into trades. So they can see the career path. A lot of companies, especially small companies, like even in my company in the past, we didn't have the path to show the new generation career path.
And I think that's where we're lack of to show our new young generation the career path to a success in the trade. I think that's my opinion.
What do you think about that, Ian? You've mentioned that in conversations we've had that the work is often billed as a job instead of a thing that you can do for your whole life and get satisfaction of it. What do we do about that?
I think we need more people going out there and discussing their career path. That's something that I bring up to the tech school students when I talk to them. I tell them how I started out exactly as they're starting out. I started out in my early 20s having absolutely no idea what I was going to do with my life, and ended up getting dropped off at different job sites by my dad to contractors that he knew, and found something I liked doing and built some life skills with that, and then realized, hey, I could actually turn this into a real career, and I don't have to go find that thing to do for a real job. I've already found it. But that earlier points made by Grant, you have to be willing to seek out your mentors. And I don't believe that you take on a mentor by finding somebody and saying, hey, will you be my mentor? You show interest in what they've done with their life, and you have to put yourself out there to get some of that mentorship and teaching back in return from that person.
I think we all agree we need to do a better job, and I think it's up to us, right? We need to show the way that this is a career, that the work is satisfying, that it's important, that you're helping people. The list goes on, and we're fighting global climate change, and buildings are a huge part of solving some of these problems, right?
One thing that we come up against when we hire new tradespeople at my company is the fact that they could go and work at one of the large gas stations or fast food places and get paid equivalent to what we're paying them to start. But you have to show that full developed career path and say, this is a entry-level job, we're going to pay you this, and here are the skills that we're going to teach you over the next 12 to 18 months to get you up to this level. When I was at that point, one of the guys that I apprenticed under on my first payday in the Carpenters Union took me out for a drink, and we got our paper checks yet at that time. And he showed me his check of what he made as a full journeyman carpenter doing foreman work on a union project. And that blew me away. It was like
I could live on that.
It's a huge amount of money. And I was like, I want to do that. But to Grant's point too, that doesn't motivate everyone. And I think at the time when I was 20, that motivated the majority of people, and we have to accept that does not anymore.
Did he pick up the round?
He did, yeah. I rarely paid for a round when I went out with the old school journeyman.
What do you think about this, Peter?
I think you guys are onto something with the showing a career path. I think the younger generation, things are so accessible on social media and phones that they're very after instant gratification. But to take the time to actually lay out what you're doing today and looking forward can get you here is very, very important. And it's something that at Koopman we've started to do, and it's been working well to reduce turnover and get people into a role. If you can show them that the job they're in today can lead to a very, very successful long-term career path, I think it's more important than ever.
Well, now that we solved that, let's move on to something else here. I want to geek out on some sweet equipment to measure my home as it relates to indoor air quality, temperature, humidity, electrical use, etc. What products would you recommend? I think it can help in my practical understanding of building science principles. As an example, I had at one point a dehumidifier measurement device monitoring the house that resulted in my adding a dehumidifier in the basement. The monitoring device crapped out, eventually was not this home center type thing I'm in search of. I want a short-term display screen options and longer-term monitoring options. I often use my home experience to communicate scope and performance metrics with potential clients. Maybe I will have clients in the future that want this, but mostly I want a sweet, simple system for myself. Anyone? Brian, you have one of these
Randy,
systems,
did you
right?
put this question in for yourself?
No.
What are your recommendations, Randy?
So I've got 5 different indoor air quality monitors now.
What's the air like in here? Are we presently
I didn't bring
okay.
it with me.
Yeah.
This won't monitor. My phone doesn't monitor air, but I can tell you what it is back in Minnesota if you want to know that. I have the Aware is the one that I have the longest. I've had the longest. It's simple. You plug it in, it gives you a number. The score is just kind of the overall indoor air quality. It's between 0 and 100. The higher the number, the better the score. But you can go into the app and you can look at the individual metrics of the air. You know, the PM 2.5, the VOCs, humidity, something else that measures. But that works really well. There are other versions too that you can tie in to control equipment. So for instance, if you did have a higher PM 2.5 level, it would kick a piece of equipment on and
Ventilate.
help to ventilate, help to clear things out. Electrically, I've got some plug-in, the kilowatt, if you're looking for the one simple device that you can plug into a wall, that works. Some of them are programmable, so you can enter in your cost of electricity, and it'll tell you over time how much that device costs to operate. I have the Emporium View installed on my electrical panel. I'm a licensed electrician, so it kind of helps if you're digging around inside your electrical service panel to install this device. But it measures individual circuits, so it's looking at different circuits. For instance, if I wanted to know how much my air conditioner or my heat pump was utilizing, I can monitor that. It'll monitor over time as long as I want it to. Same thing, you can enter in data for cost. So if you're not familiar with the kilowatt usage, you can refer to a number for your cost, a dollar sign for you. You do it that way.
As a brief aside, what is the difference between a system that costs $100 versus one that's hundreds or 1,000? What are you giving up for a lower cost device for monitoring indoor air quality?
Most of the residential models are going to be the lower. Well, there are some that are 100. I've got one that it seems to be pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. But the other ones I have are $250, $300. Some of it's feature based. So my highest, most expensive one also monitors radon. It's sitting in my basement, so it's monitoring indoor air quality plus radon. That's why that one was more money. The more expensive versions probably aren't. I mean, unless you're a really big nerd, you probably aren't going to spend the $1,000 on an indoor air quality monitor.
What are your thoughts on this, Ben?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of AirThings, which is one of the platforms. The reason I like AirThings is, like Randy was getting to there, it shows radon, which is one of the biggest health impacting air quality constituents out there in our homes, right? It's second leading cause of lung cancer after smoking. So I think it's something that we should be including diligently if we're looking for stuff. And then I really don't care too much about CO2 level. I don't really care too much about VOC levels. The one thing that I want to watch is particulate, PM 2.5. What all of the research is showing is that that's the one that's impacting our health. So finding something that does radon levels and then finding something that does PM 2.5, both of which AirThings does in one unit, it's about a $300 buy. And Patrick, to touch on your comment there of like, what's the difference between $100 and $300? It's precision is really what it comes down to. But like Randy was getting to, all of these things that are in this approachable homeowner price range are not very precise. But it doesn't matter, because what we need them to do is we need them to be a trend indicator. We need them to show us when something is changing in the home so that we can understand something's going on and we can adjust. It doesn't have to tell me exactly how many, 0.1 micron particles are in my air. That doesn't mean anything to me. It just means to tell me that it's better now than it was a half hour ago.
Here's a good one, because this is something that I think about a lot. How do you frame the conversation with customers to help them understand that quality isn't defined by stone veneer, copper flashings, and high-end kitchens, and that the primary quality metric should first be evaluated by the attention to the building envelope and the mechanical systems, especially ventilation and dehumidification. How do we get folks to realize what's important about houses versus what they think's important? You're ready, Grant. You're ready to pounce.
Scare them.
Scare them.
So I think, and a lot of you who have had this conversation with clients, we don't sell energy efficiency. It doesn't work. They don't care. They do want their very expensive countertops and their very nice tile from Italy, though. The method I've always taken when talking about this is I can replace your countertops in 5 years very easily. I can retile your floor relatively easily. I cannot redo your wall assembly easily. I cannot rebuild your floor assembly easily. To some extent, I can't even replace your windows very easily. I think what happens is clients get so worried about how, the finished product is, and it has to look nice. There's no doubt about that. But what we need to do a better job of educating people is when you're making some of these decisions, they are final decisions for the life of the house. So pay more attention to your final decisions and less attention to your decisions that can be changed easily.
How do you handle this, Ian?
There was a few presentations that happened over the last 2 days where the presenter said we don't give them a choice. And I think there's some merit to that, where if you're going to seek one of our companies out as the expert to build your project, then this is what we do for your building envelope. If you'd like to nerd out on why we do it that way, we'd be glad to, but otherwise you're coming to us because you have sought out someone to build you a project that way.
Peter, Randy, thoughts? Do your customers complain about this, Peter? Do they say like, oh my gosh, I wish so-and-so would worry about like how we're building their roof and sturdiness of their house versus their countertops? I'm guessing you hear that.
I mean, we work with builders and architects that are professionals. So if I tend to get involved with a homeowner that wants to discuss plywood or something, and we always push it back on the builder or the architect. They're paying them a fee to share their knowledge and skill set to provide them with the best home possible. So whenever we can, we're pushing that back on you guys because we trust you. I mean, we're here to support and not really dictate the conversation with the customer, but we will talk about 75 different types of decking.
I'm sure that is a very tiresome conversation, but yeah. What do you think about this, Randy?
So I started a series on Green Building Advisor. It's called the Building Science Puzzles. And so far, it's only been one that we've released. I've got another one coming out soon. It's energy audits and mostly building investigations that I've done. And it's on people that trusted their builder to do something right. For instance, an energy or a building investigation I was on just a few weeks ago. It was a 2008 build, and they called me because there was some damage on the cladding, that siding. It was a log-sided house. They pulled the siding off, and they found it was a lot of rot at a 15, 16, 17-year-old house. That's the sheeting is basically rotting off. Well, we went in to discover that it's in climate zone 7, open cell spray foam without a vapor retarder. There was no, the moisture was moving through the structure very easily, and it was getting wet and turning to mulch. It's reading the experience of others, I think, especially as
you as a builder say, I was called to this house and it rotted because they did this, and this is what I'm trying to prevent on your house.
Exactly.
You should listen to me.
Yeah, listen to me.
This is real.
Yep.
This is not imaginary.
Exactly. Take a class as a homeowner and understand that, hey, there's problems. There's houses that have issues out there, and there's reasons for them. Understand a little bit about it, so you know what your builder's doing.
Any of you all have ways to navigate this? Brian, this woman here has got her hand up. This has got to be really hard because they're paying the bills. They don't want to have bottomless budgets and probably can't. But you don't see what's behind the drywall or behind the siding. That's a harder sell, I think, for most people. What do you think?
So I generally work on remodels, and a lot of the times my clients are families with either young or not terribly young kids. So one thing, I think we talked a lot about storytelling and how you sell. And one word that has worked really well is generational. This is a generational decision we're making.
You're building a better house to benefit your children, I guess is what you're trying to say.
It's
Yeah.
part of the story, right? We talk about when it's about the building envelope, right? A deep energy retrofit. This is the time. If you're going to be doing A, B, also do D, right? This is a generational decision. If you cover this up now, you're not looking at it again for 30 years. So now's the time. Same with systems and all of that.
I would also tell folks in many of these decisions, you're not talking about a lot of money compared to the rest of the build. And, you know, it's very easy for me to say, well, it's only a little of your money. But the truth is, it's very little of your money. Let's build something good and have something you can be proud of and have it work well versus saving a few dollars so you can have better countertops, right?
Yeah, and I think another large part of this is, and also to the one previous question we had is, in a way, we almost need to force people to. You know, we have the codes, we're moving forward with the codes, and then states walk them back every single code cycle.
Except Massachusetts.
Yeah, except Massachusetts. Yeah, but you know, we need to do better, and as builders, we need to do better to push. You know, a rising tide floats all boats. So, building better houses. If you don't give people an option to build a better house, they have to build a better house. You know.
I have tons more questions that folks sent in, but you know, you all are here, and I'm grateful for you to be here. Is there anything that you all want to ask the panelists, or I'm guessing some of our presenters are still here. Ben's still here. David's still here. Okay, well, here we go. I just wrapped up a gut renovation. Several of the one-off details were included as part of this project. I loved working through them and executing them, but I also think that the revolution David was talking about could be extended toward design. I think we give clients too much leeway to include one-off custom details that suck labor, materials, time, because we want to deliver that custom experience, but it keeps us from building that next job, and affordability is completely out the window. Sure, how do we get folks to want repeatable things versus their one-off custom thing? What do you think, Ian? Can you convince clients that they don't want this one-off thing that's going to suck a lot of resources?
I think it was part of what Justin's presentation was, where you get really good at doing something that is a niche idea. And that's one of the things I'm going to take back is my company is really good at putting the second story on a ranch house that's, you know, built in the 50s, or we're really good at putting a dormer on your third story attic so that your kids can have a playroom. And those are the things that we need to lean into, because even my lead carpenter, who typically is the one framing a project like that, I'll ask him, did you learn anything from this particular dormer? And he'll say, well, it was just like this dormer that we did over there, but it had a little bit from this other one that we did on a different side of town. And what I've tried to do is get him to start teaching that to the people who are working with him. Because if he can impart that knowledge upon others on the crew of, hey, remember when we did this other job? Do you see how this particular dormer is just a little bit different version of that, but we're doing all the same things? You can, over time as a crew, start to compound that efficiency, and then maybe that can make up for a bespoke detail that one job has to have because of, you know, some existing condition of the house, or something that the client wants that's part of a generational decision, which is another thing I'm going to be stealing.
That's good, right? Yeah, because no one wants to say, well, my kids will be fine. They'll fix this. What do you think, guys? You got any thoughts on this? How do we get folks to make our jobs easier, I guess is a good way to put it. You can't, right? Yeah, I don't know. I would say talk to your friends who are in the design community and tell them to keep it in check.
But you also have to have that feedback loop between the field and the design team. It goes back to what Jesse was saying in his presentation about the people in the field who are correcting the issues and never getting that information back to the design staff. So if your design staff isn't coming out to the site at just the perfect time where that lead carpenter is moving something or saying, well, this wall and tub need to move a little bit, they're never going to get that knowledge. So you do have to have that constructive feedback loop between the field and design.
As a brief aside, I was talking about that at dinner last night, and a good lead carpenter would never expect that the tub dimensions on a plan set are going to be the actual rough-in dimensions. That's just part of the job, is you make that expectation. But there are so many things that we fix that shouldn't need to be fixed. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah. How do you keep that under control?
It goes back to having the feedback loop and having that, my company isn't all that great at doing a post-mortem of a job, but what we try to do is have a company culture where the design team knows that they can show up on any project they want at any time, and they can talk to the leads, or they can show up at lunch, or take the lead carpenter out to lunch and ask them how the project is going. What do you like about the drawings? What do you think was deficient in this set of drawings? Was there something that you're missing from the handoff? And then think critically about it, and as a manager or a design professional, be okay with taking that criticism. And
What if your design professional is from outside the company? It's an architectural firm or engineering firm or whatever. How do you tactfully, because these are folks we need to have cordial professional relationships, I think we all would agree. How do you get it back to them that, that detail was kind of lame. We couldn't build it the way and this happens all the time, right? This is a normal thing.
I think you have to assume positive intent from the design professional, which, 25-year-old carpenter me would be really shocked to hear 45-year-old manager me saying that. But you do have to assume that what they drew was something that they believed was going to work and was right for the project.
And you have to gently say that what you thought was going to work, and thanks for drawing it, but it doesn't work. How do you do that tactfully?
But it goes back to the positive intent. You have to go to the design professional and say, my understanding of what you drew was X. When I put it together and tried to execute it, I got Y. Is there something that I'm missing? And I think if you approach it with that curiosity of, let's remove me as the problem first before just assuming that it's the design professional or the person that fed you that detail, you're going to get a lot further than picking up the phone and calling the architect and saying, why did you draw it that way?
That doesn't seem to be a productive way to handle that at all. This is a great one here. How do we change the mindset and make a ranch cool again? I say bring back the 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch house. I also heard my friend Jason Webster with Huntington Homes speak about this too. It's very interesting when we're considering building affordable houses that are durable, healthy, resilient homes. Will, you must still be here. Will, is this your question? I knew it was. It's a great question because we used to build very simple houses. Anyone in this room would agree. We used to build single-story boxes post-war, meant to be affordable, quick to build, sometimes 30-day cycle times. Why is that not appealing to the marketplace? And my guess is it's because we just don't build any, because property costs are too high that you have to maximize every dollar. Am I oversimplifying this, y'all? How do we make this a viable type of house again?
I think it's going to happen organically.
Because of cost, Randy?
Because of cost.
Yeah.
That's one way to bring costs down, is to just make it simple. Keep it as simple as you can. Foursquare or the ranch, anything like that. That's the 1 or 2 roof lines, very, very simple. To give you an example, I was involved right before I started with GBA. I was involved in a consulting job with a customer that said he wanted a simple house. and he went to work with a designer. By the time they were done, it had 14 corners. There was 13 different roof lines. There were 245s that came off in 2 different directions off the wings of the house. Very, very complicated. I couldn't figure out how we were going to air seal that without, adding a substantial cost to the project. And here, the concrete guy is laying all this out, and his comment was to the homeowner, "You nailed it." It was supposed to be simple. It was not simple. It was complicated.
Their previous project was like the Apple headquarters in Cupertino, California, right? And they're like,
Something
oh,
like
this is
that,
really easy. No worries.
Yeah. But yeah, that's simple. Keeping things simple is the easiest way to bring costs down.
And I would say it's the best way, the easiest way to have a reliable envelope. When you have these houses with all these different exterior finishes and bump outs and weird roof lines and stuff, it gets way more hard to make a good envelope, right?
Yeah, I can get it pretty airtight when it's simple. Very airtight.
What do you guys think about this? Is there a place for ranch houses in Madison, Wisconsin, Ian?
Well, that's what we're putting second stories on a lot of. But Randy's thing about the corners made me think about in my concrete guy's estimate worksheet, which he turns into his proposal, he sent me the spreadsheet of it once. So I totally pirated it into my spreadsheet for estimating. But he had a line item in there that it was a count of how many corners the building had. And he includes 6 corners in his bid, and anything over 6 corners is $250 a corner. Anything over 10 corners, which I was like, how could you even have more than 10 corners? But now Randy explained how that happens, was like 500 a corner or something like that up over 10. It was really interesting.
That's punitive, it sounds like, right? Like just forget it. Everyone laughed at your description of adding second stories to those little houses. But what's wrong with that? What is wrong with adding a second story when you need more space and starting with something that's cheap and easy to build?
What we have found is that you can add half a second story. So we've done a few projects where you've taken small ranch houses and then just added 1 room to the second floor and making that a primary bedroom suite. And typically, backside of these ranch houses have the 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, has the basement stairs, and you can align your stairs going up to the new second floor with that basement stair. You can align the 2 bathrooms on top of each other, and you can stack a really nicely proportioned primary bedroom suite with a walk-in closet over those 2 bedrooms. And they're a lot of money, but when you think about how that house then stands out in its market, it's a bit of where you have to balance that house as a luxury good asset with your remodeling pricing, because it might take 5 years for them to have a house that appreciates to cover that, but it will happen when you stay within the same footprint and you're not putting in a new foundation and you're not having to add a second furnace to a house because you're putting too big of an addition on it. So these are the things that you have to think about as a remodeler or a designer to keep those costs down and to do a simple, high value, high impact project to an existing home.
We're, a couple minutes from our time being up. What do you all want to tell the folks that are here and our presenters about the summit? Any final words you all want to share? I'll go first if you aren't already. The success of an event like this depends on good presenters. It depends on folks, at Fine Homebuilding and AIM doing their jobs. But I would say at least as important as you all coming. And I applaud you for your willingness and dedication to do a better job for your clients, to do a better job for the planet. And I am eternally grateful for your contributions, both your kind words and your submissions and contributions to the brand. And you all are going to be the ones where the future lies. And I encourage you to keep your optimism, to keep your passion, to keep your willingness to learn and improve yourselves, to grow your business and do good work for your clients. And I hope that I will see you next year at another Fine Homebuilding Summit. Brian is nodding. So you all heard it. It's a commitment now. So we're going to do our best to pull it off, right? What do you guys want to say?
Ditto.
Ditto, yeah. I want to thank Christine Wilson from AIM, who was the spearhead behind the venue and helping organize this. And folks like this behind the scene get so little credit, but she is a rock star in getting this pulled together. And I think it was pretty smooth. What do you guys think? What do you all think? How'd it go? Were you happy? Yeah.
Of course,
Go ahead.
Thanks to the sponsors for.
Yeah, and especially thanks to the sponsors because you all make it happen, and I appreciate your help in furthering the important work of Fine Homebuilding and the important work that all these folks are doing.
And thank you to the builders and architects. Without you guys, we don't have a business. So we greatly appreciate everything you guys do to continue to push craft forward and keep it alive.
Especially those of you in Massachusetts who buy from him. I was going to say.
Thanks for the plug.
Keep fighting the good fight. It's not always easy. It's not always fun, but
At least you're getting rich.
the good. Yeah. But
One dormer at a time.
remember that society runs in cycles, so we are the few now, but eventually one day, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be the people who adopt it, better building on the leading edge, which is going to make us the experts then, and it's going to make us in a hope wildly successful, and so just keep learning. Never, a day you don't learn is a day that you wasted. So keep fighting the good fight, and keep reading Fine Homebuilding.
Hey, thank you all so much for being here. I can tell you the conversations I had with you all here at the show were amazing, and the best part of it is hanging out with you all, and I am grateful for your being here and your participation, and see you next year.